Hey everyone, welcome to Flywheel Pod, your number one source for everything Frax, DeFi, and everything in between. If you want to know what's going on in the world on chain, you've come to the right place. This is DeFi Dave, here with capital K. We're here to help you harness the power of the flywheel. And speaking of flywheels expanding, we had on Mr. Scoopy Trooples, the founder of Alchemix, who recently had a very interesting call for comment in the Alchemix forum to further integrate Frax into their architecture. And it was quite the fruitful conversation. We saw it a few days ago on Twitter and in the forum, and I was like, we need to have Scoopy on ASAP, and we need to have him on Halloween, because it'd only be fitting for having him on Halloween. So, Kiet, what are your thoughts on the episode?
I think this was a very, very special episode with Mr. Trooples, and I feel like he came on and laid it into us on the questions he had for his community. Like he really represented his community's interests, kind of shared Alchemix's philosophy on their operation and things of that nature. And I'm very excited. I really do hope the partnership materializes and really goes far.
It was a very constructive, diplomatic conversation with bits and bits of alpha sprinkled in between, which I think the viewers and listeners will really value and enjoy.
Oh, you got to stay to the end for this one too. So, for those that stay to the end.
Like a pulse, like every 15, 30 minutes, like just a little drop there, a little drop there. So, definitely want to listen to this one all the way through.
And on this note, let's jump right into the episode. But before we jump in, make sure you smash that subscribe button and follow us at Flywheel Pod on Telegram and on Twitter.
And don't forget to follow me at DeFi Dave 22.
And follow me at 0xcapital_K. Now let's get the flywheel spinning.
Thanks everyone for joining this Halloween special of Flywheel Pod. I am Arizona iced tea can, and Kiet, what are you for Halloween?
I'm in my jujitsu gi.
Jujitsu gi, yeah. And today we have on one of the co-founders of Alchemix, Mr. Scoopy Trooples. Scoopy Trooples, how are you doing today? Happy Halloween.
I'm doing fine today. Happy Halloween to you too. You can't see me on camera, but I have my Rahul Ligma outfit on.
Nice.
I will have a sip to that. To Rahul. Oh, that's honestly, there's probably so many Rahul costumes out in SF and all over.
It's the obligatory lazy tech bro costume.
Yeah, just in time for everybody that procrastinated on costumes and everything.
Just bring a box.
Just bring a box. Just bring a box. But speaking of Halloween and magic, we are here to talk about Alchemix and also the recent request for comment that you posted a few days ago that caught the attention of not just the Alchemix community, the Frax community, but a lot of people outside of it. So to just start this off, can you give a little bit of an intro about yourself, Alchemix, and what you have built for Alchemix over the past year and a half?
Yeah, so Alchemix is a project that was conceived and launched together with me and my co-founders back in 2021. Before we launched, we noticed oh my God, the yields on DeFi are insane. And, being naively optimistic at the time, we thought, yeah, DeFi is going to kill, TradFi because we got these awesome interest rates. What can we do with them? And when we were kind of brainstorming in the lab and stuff like that, we worked with many different models, and eventually we had a light bulb moment. And Alchemix was born. It's what if we could back, stable coins by interest instead of debt, right? So kind of turning it on its head in that regard. And that's how self-repaying loans from Alchemix was born.
Yeah, I remember how pissed off people from traditional finance Twitter were when they found out about Alchemix. They're like, this has to be a scam. But you're like, no, not only is it not a scam, there's actually a real-world equivalent to something like Alchemix, right?
Yeah, if you're a HELOC, right? A line of credit type of thing. that is kind of like the TradFi analog to this, I would say. Um, the thing is, I think a lot of those people missed is that, alUSD and alETH, they're over collateralized, right? So like, if the peg is lost, then people just can repay their loans and get out of it, and like, there's no harm, and the peg will anneal eventually, so it's we have other peg mechanisms as well, but because we are over collateralized, there's not a whole lot of risk to the integrity of the system itself.
Yeah. And can you go over the evolution of Alchemix from like when you first launched, what the model was like, and what adjustments you made and how it evolved to the Alchemix that it is today?
Oh yeah, sure. So when we first launched, it was basically kind of like our prototype. We were an unfunded team. Everybody was just like volunteering, and we thought we had something that was good enough to launch. And then all of a sudden, we saw massive adoption and success that we had not really anticipated whatsoever. I mean, before we launched, like, DeFi total TVL was under 10 billion. So we were thinking, hey, if we can get up to 100 million TVL, that'll put us in the top 10 of all DeFi protocols, right? So, and then all of a sudden, like, 2 months after we launched, we're at like a billion TVL. And, I don't think I was really prepared for that mentally at the time, like seeing that much money in our smart contracts. I was like, oh my effing God. This is a big deal, guys. So like, we did all the requisite security stuff in there while the audit was ongoing, because we launched unaudited, because, we're not anticipating that. We thought, oh yeah, we get 10 million TVL, that would be cool, right? Something like that. But like, so we got like, some pretty big like heavy hitters to review our code, from like the Yearn ecosystem and stuff like that. And then we got audited, and then I started being able to sleep at night after everything came back clear.
Okay.
So we continued along with that, but you know how sometimes like the first iteration that you launch is not really exactly like the actual thing you wanted. You kind of like cut some corners, or you made some compromises in order to ship it. And one of the things that the version 1 of Alchemix kind of lacked was that like the contract could only handle one asset, and that's that, and it was an immutable contract, so we couldn't go in and upgrade it and then change things to it. So with our version 2, we tried to address some of the shortcomings of our version 1, and it allows for multiple collaterals to be added for alUSD and alETH, and then multiple strategies to hook into it. So we're like kind of slowly building up a menu for our users to select a yield from DeFi. Next up is we're going to be working with Vesper and getting Vesper Finance vaults
Cool.
integrated into Alchemix. We got something working with Idle Finance. We'll be able to have general support for them, but they're also working on this thing called Clearpool, which is sort of like
Very
this
cool.
under collateralized lending facility. And we're going to trial that. We're probably not going to give it too much, of a deposit, cap, a relatively small deposit cap, just because, with everything that happened with CeFi blowing up, Celsius, and the like, people are understandably a little bit skittish about under or uncollateralized lending. So, but it's something I think is a neat experiment, and that would be an okay, like if like less than 5% of alUSD is collateralized by that,
Yeah.
along the lines of that. And meanwhile, we are also looking at some other strategies that they, and the research phase internally, but hopefully we can get those out sometime soon as well.
Yeah, I have two immediate thoughts that come to my head. The first one is, when a protocol launches and you're like, oh, maybe we'll reach this goal, maybe we'll do all right, and then it like exceeds beyond expectations. I feel like that happened with a few of our past gets, like Redacted and Olympus. Like what was like the massive success like they had at first? It was like, whoa, like, and they were just what they were thinking, like the builders on the inside were like, okay, like is everything safe? Is everything secure? Like, what was it like when you guys were getting all that hype? Because I remember you guys launched at like right after DeFi Summer. It was like the beginning of 2021, I believe, and there's like a certain magic around it. Like, you had really good meme power with Alchemix and everything, and everybody was just really excited to ape into something new, and they still had like that DeFi Summer like residue hanging over. So what was it like at first, and how did you and your team handle like, you know, that first like ring of success, and then like, you know, things, of course, as they always do, level off?
I it was like, you know, like I said, it was a very intense time. Like at one point, like I was really worried about, you know, having all this TVL and having, you know, anxiety that comes along with that. But then it was also extremely exciting and fun to interact with people on Twitter and, you know, get this attention and be like the bells of the ball of DeFi, you know, for you know, this few months after we launched. Not gonna lie, it was a nice thing. It kind of maybe, you know, was too much of an ego boost at times, but
It happens.
you know,
Yeah.
things have definitely leveled out, and you know, yeah, we've settled down, and we're taking care of our mental health in the bear market, and we're building and
Good.
That's
everything
what
like
bears
that.
are for. You know, bring
Yeah.
us all back down to earth to relax a bit.
Like I remember
But this,
when
yeah.
Alchemix was, you know, just coming out, and it had the perfect meme, right? A loan that repays itself, right in the cusp of this little DeFi magic thing that we're all working in, and we're like,
Yeah.
oh, loans that repay themselves makes sense. It totally makes sense in DeFi land.
This
So it
is
had a
what
lot of
DeFi can do,
power.
guys.
Exactly, this is what DeFi could do. You know, but like
Yeah.
you mentioned earlier, Scoopy, that you know you're just one of many co-founders, and you know you're not the CEO per se. Could you share a bit more about the team and how that formation took place?
Yeah, so I was experimenting and playing around with various D apps as far back as 2017,
Nice.
back when I didn't understand what the gas limit meant on my MetaMask. I was like, I better
Yeah.
crank this up to 3 million. I want this transaction to go through fast. Like, why isn't it going? What, you know, like things like that. So, you know, getting into CryptoKitties, and then, you know, like in early 2018, I think there was a lot of like these kind of like degenerate dApps that were out there. Some people might call them Ponzi's. Some people might call them reverse pyramids. I don't really know. But you know, just playing around and experimenting with some of these things, kind of like, you know, started like, you know, tickling my mind, so to speak, of like the various different cool things and mechanisms that you could design. And while I was, you know, participating in these discords, I made a number of friendships with a bunch of other people who, you know, were there. And you know, then we kind of splintered off and kept on thinking, oh, let's make this project. Oh, let's make this project. And we had like probably a good 5 projects that we started that didn't end up, you know, getting very far. And then eventually it was like summer of 2020, and a number of people who were sort of part of like this kind of like, you know, group who have been looking to make dApps. We came up with an idea and that we all thought was really strong and sound, and that was decidedly like a good thing. Like it wasn't like some degenerate Ponzi or anything like that, and something we all felt really good getting behind. And that turned into Alchemix. And that's, you know, people from like people who are more like OPSEC community who like run like somebody, our co-founder Gorby is in charge of doing our Discord and securing a bunch of stuff in OPSEC. And he's also like a really strong like adversarial thinker and helps us with mechanism design and stuff like that. We had myself. You know, we had another dev who, a few other Solidity devs as well as a part of that group. And, you know, we pulled together and
Wow.
we were able to launch, you know, finally.
Friends you
After a
made,
couple of years
yeah.
of failed, you know, experimentation and, you know, planning. So it was good.
You know, it's about the friends you make along the way that become your builders by your side.
Yeah, that, I mean, if anybody out there is a prospective builder, yeah, make relations in like, you know, the telegrams and the discords, and and then, you know, form your own group. That's probably the best way, you know, instead
Yeah.
of, you know, first coming up with a pitch deck and then trying to build a team. I think it's better to, you know, start with, you know, build a team before anything even exists,
Right,
and then come up to with ideas together.
Yeah, you
How
got to
big
find
is
the
the
people
team?
that will grind it.
How large is the
No, how
team,
big is the
Scoopy?
team?
Oh, how large is the team? So it was originally 5 co-founders, and right now we're up to like 8 full-time people on Alchemix, and we have a number of part-time DAO contributors that are on our coordinate. Do you guys know what that
Nice.
is?
Yeah,
Yes.
no,
Yes.
I'm a big fan of Coordinate.
Yeah, so basically, yeah, we give our community builders and DAO members like sort of like a fixed budget, and then based on their contributions, they award each other these tokens, and then they get a proportional payout for based on their contributions, and that's worked really well.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say like, it's really important to find friends and people to build with you that you know that will like stick with you through the tough times and the bear. Because it's like easy when you find someone and like make a pitch deck, raise money, but like if things get tough or things get a little fragile, like you want people by your side that that will stick it out with you rather than just
Yeah,
go away.
it's not always sunshine and rainbows
It's
in a
not,
team and stuff like
there's a lot
that,
of
but
stuff in the
I think
background. Yeah,
But I think sometimes, having like a diverse group of people, and lots of voices is a good thing. It ultimately makes you stronger, even if there's some inefficiencies that come along, with such a structure.
yeah. It's finding like the right balance of people, like that will contribute, but also like not having too many chefs in the kitchen.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
I bet you guys must have grown a ton, right? Going from 0 TVL to 1 billion TVL, now back to kind of where you guys are. Like, what were some of your biggest pain points kind of going through this period?
Um, Kind of like the burden of expectations from the community. I think it was probably one of the hardest things to grapple. Um, you know, like development timelines, internally you think, oh yeah, we're going to get this out in the next 3 months, and then you hit a snag in development in the middle of it, and then things start taking longer than you expected. And I think like when that happens, and the community is expecting something big because you've communicated with them and trying to be open with them about what's going on, then they're like, come on, when are you guys going to do this? When launch? When this next thing? And I think that's kind of like a tough thing to juggle. Is trying to be open with the community, and managing expectations for them at the same time. I think, yeah, that's one of the biggest hurdles, I think, for sure. Another one is definitely putting into place, security best practices and sticking to them, and making sure that we safeguard everyone's, funds.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
what are some of the security practices that you guys do?
Yeah, so when anything is has gotten to like any smart contract has gotten complete, we then write a whole suite of tests with that includes fuzzing as well, and then that gets reviewed
What's
by
fuzzing?
all the Solidity developers on our team. What was that?
I said, what was fuzzing? What's fuzzing?
So fuzzing is like running a bunch of like different possible scenarios and simulations on the smart contract to see if there's like any edge cases that pop up, or if you're using like some advanced math formulas in the smart contracts, like because of just the way that like code works, if a number like kind
Understood.
of goes under or above a certain threshold, it can brick the contract. So by testing for those things and finding out like where the instabilities may lie, we can then go back and iterate and account for those things.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, so we do that. Then we have our Solidity developers all then review each other's code, and if it's like something small, or like just an iteration of something that's already been audited, usually that's something we can just roll out from that point on. But if it's some type of new code that hasn't been done before or hasn't been deployed before, it does get audited. And we have a strong relationship with Runtime Verification, which is one of the leading auditing firms in the space. And we've also used Code Arena as well.
Code Arena, yeah. I feel like a lot more people are using Code Arena every day. I think they have a pretty cool model with like all their wardens and then the competition, and it seems like a really good supplement to like all like the auditing that a lot of protocols do already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've been pleased with everything, and to date, we had one incident when we launched alETH last year, but users did not lose any funds in that incident. It was just the protocol. So to date, we have not had any user funds be compromised at all, and that's something I'm very proud of.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. One thing I was going to ask too was, in theory, could Alchemix plug into any interest-bearing protocol?
So with Alchemix, the way that our V2 is working is that we make a few assumptions that like the stable coins that we put in are worth $1, right? So we assume that DAI is going to be worth $1, USDC and USDT are going to be worth $1. And then when we assess for risk and determine which types of vaults that we can accept, the one major requirement that they have to have is a strong assurance of up only. So if we're going to be doing that kind of restricts us to things like Yearn, things like Aave, and other like kind of yield aggregators that are out there. And kind of doesn't allow us to do things like delta neutral vaults because those can incur losses. This is something that we are actively looking at trying to remedy going forward, but I really can't talk about it much more than that at the moment. It's confidential.
Yeah. Do you think it would be possible to have other strategies in the future, like whether they're delta neutral or not?
Yes. Short answer is yes, but I'm not going to get into why or how I think so. Like,
Got it.
We'll save that for the next. We'll save that for the next time. We'll save for V3 maybe coming. Just kidding. Anyways, back. Yeah, we're gonna say.
Actually, I did wanted to ask about your Elixir AMO. Like, could you share a little bit about that strategy and how you came about the AMO's architect?
Yeah, so our original peg stability module was something called the transmuter, and it still does exist and is used. But basically, the way that worked is that any interest that was repaid from like harvesting yield, or any that was repaid from harvesting yield, would go into the transmuter, as well as anytime somebody repaid their loan using the collateral, because you have the option to repay in the synth or the collateral. And whenever that happens, it goes into the peg stability module, the transmuter. And at one point, the transmuter was sitting on like 200 million DAI. And we were taking advantage of earning yield from it in Yearn. But then, after seeing, Frax's AMOs, the light bulbs went off, and I was like, wouldn't it make a lot more sense if we just put that directly into our liquidity pools, and that way we would only we'd have a lot less pressure on our peg, and we could use the instead of having this giant idle pool of capital sitting there, we could put it into the markets directly, and then whenever needed to adjust the peg, we can just withdraw it single-sided to kind of balance it out and stuff like that. So, that's really been a big help. It allowed us to, defend the peg really effectively in the wake of, Terra Luna going down. At that point, every decentralized stablecoin was taking a massive hit, basically not because of mechanism design, but because, just confidence in decentralized stablecoins really evaporated at that moment. And LPs did not want to take the risk of being in those pools.
Yeah, it really made a difference having protocol-owned liquidity, whether it was you guys or Frax, and that really went far away for defending each other's peg.
Yeah, we had to contract alUSD supply by I think it's about close to 130 million due to the market drawdown and stuff like that.
I think Frax contracted 1.5 billion from its all-time high.
Frax is an order of magnitude bigger than
that's true.
Alchemix at this point.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Scoopy, just
You
so
guys
I'm
are still doing
clear,
well. I think there's what 1.2 billion Frax still in
yeah,
existence. So
1.2.
like still by far like the second largest decentralized stablecoin like
Yeah.
out there, with only DAI being bigger.
Right. Scoop, I
Yeah.
just
I
want to
think
make
what I
sure
like about
I'm
all these.
clear about I'm sorry, Dave. I just want to make sure I'm clear about the Elixir AMO. Is that the initial DAI came from all of the collateral that the user used to mint alUSD, right? And then you were sitting on that DAI. Instead of putting it into Yearn, you decided to, hey, let me put it into Curve and pair it against alUSD.
No. So it's only the stuff that would go into the peg stability module. So that's repayments done on people's debt,
Oh, okay.
done in the collateral. So whether that's from
Got it.
earned interest or from people, repaying their loan in DAI,
Understood.
or self liquidating, because you can liquidate your collateral to repay your debt. So whenever
Understood.
those actions happen, it fills up our peg stability module. And then
Understood.
instead of having that deployed to Yearn, we then deployed that to our Curve alUSD3 pool.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I was gonna say was I like how this how the stablecoin ecosystem is evolving and every stablecoin is having its place and like developing its own niche, and like you guys are definitely have developed your own niche from the get go with the repaying loans, and now how you guys have evolved since then. And the thing I was going to ask you though was about what about Frax like struck you first as like a protocol, and what did you like about it, and like what really caught your attention first about it?
I listened, like, I think it was back in 2020, to the Delphi Digital podcast, and Sam was on there and talking to Tom. And, I was impressed then, and I thought, like, their model was really interesting and novel. So, like, it was on my radar, from that point on. And, I didn't get too much into it. Like, I was busy trying to launch a protocol at that time. But like part of my job, and I do a lot of like product development, is to keep an eye on the space and see what other like competitors are doing. And when Frax started the AMO, like I was really intrigued by it. I didn't understand it at first, but then as like it all settled in, I was like, wow, this is really cool. I wonder how we can do it. And even though the answer was staring me right at the face, like, by using our PSM for doing that, um, it took me a couple months to actually realize, oh, we can do this. Yeah, so that's kind of like
Yeah.
what I thought about Frax. And I think what really made it appealing is how, part of the stable coin design that I think is really understated, or like, not talked about enough, is, yeah, it's important for you to be able to scale up and have mechanisms to do that, but it's also equally important to have mechanisms to scale down.
Mm.
And I saw the AMO as a way that could gracefully scale up and down.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So that was kind of like my main draw to wanting to adopt that model for Alchemix as well.
Yeah.
So,
It's
Scoopy, as more people deposit into the alUSD 3 CRV pool, are you able to mint more alUSD against that, just like how Frax does with the Curve AMO?
No, we don't have that
Okay,
algorithmic component
I see.
in Alchemix. Once it's withdrawn, it gets burned. But the thinking is, if enough gets burned and the peg, goes back to 1 to 1, um, that when or if alUSD starts going over peg again, then people will naturally start, taking advantage of this arbitrage, and in doing so, it will refill our peg stability module, which will allow us to then add it back into our AMO.
I see a flywheel here.
It definitely,
So
definitely.
it's pretty resilient. If we scale down really hard, there's avenues to scale back up. It's not quite as automatic as Frax is. Oh, it's over $1. Oh, let's add some more to the pool, type of thing. But like it's a little bit slower, but it's still, in theory, very similar. It allows us to meet demand essentially.
Yeah. I like what you said. Like, not only do you need to build mechanisms to scale up, but it's important to think the other way and scale down. I feel like a lot of protocols just think growth, 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 growth. And then you have situations, whether it's like Luna or Yearn or like all the other stablecoins that are no longer with us, rest in peace. They all thought about just growing, but they didn't keep in mind of like, up doesn't last forever, as we all learned.
Right. And, and using like an exogenous collateral like Luna to collateralize UST, it created the death spiral because their mechanism for contracting, destroyed their token value, which was worth the back it. So it just got uglier and uglier as it went down.
When Luna was on its, come up, and like even before then, like what were your thoughts on Luna, and then like seeing it like have its dramatic rise the way it did? Like where you're like, oh wow, like is there something here? Where you like sketched out? Like what were your initial thoughts going on around there?
I had known about Luna and Terra way back before UST existed. It was just Chai. And I was listening to a podcast, the Epicenter podcast, which is like a kind of like, Cosmos, ecosystem maxis kind of like run that. And even they were really kind of pressing, I don't know if it was Do Kwon or if it was somebody else who was on that podcast, but pressing them about their model and the Terra people were just like, yes, we will create demand for it, and that's what will back it is demand. And I'm like, and they made the point that, well, demand only works when it's that only works when like, you're growing, right? Mm-hmm. If there's a drop in demand, then it would cause a death spiral. So like I had in that death spiral in mind from like a very early period, and that's why despite our community loudly crying for us to get UST on Alchemix, our team was very much against it because like we wanted to take a wait and see approach. Could it withstand a bear market? If so, then their mechanism design would be validated and our fears would go away. But when the bear market struck, it was the first thing to go. So I think that wait and see approach really, really panned out. I mean, that's kind of my approach for a lot of these like alt, EVM chains and, and like, Ethereum competitors and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, things are good in a bull market. Let's see how things shake, when the shit hits the fan. Who's going to remain standing? And then whoever is, then, those will be, the people who will stick around long term and the ones who are worth building with.
You can say that it pays to be patient.
Oh, yes. Sometimes we our processes are a little bit slow at Alchemix, but we've, as a result, dodged a few bullets because of it.
No,
like we were gonna get we had a plan to integrate into Rare Fuse, and it was starting to take shape, and then the Rare Fuse, like ETH reentrancy attack happened, and it's like, whoops, well, no more. Good thing that this took an extra month longer than we were expecting. So I know you guys were affected by that, but again, like, your mechanism design is so strong that, you're able to more or less shrug that off. You're more or less able to shrug off, the 4-pool integration with, Terra.
Yeah, we got real lucky with that it didn't get too big, that integration.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see it in your community, right? With all the proposals you guys have, that your community is actually quite vigilant, and they care a lot about Alchemix's success, and they take a very stringent approach to all kind of partnerships or large changes. But I see here that you have a recent proposal regarding the Frax base pool AMO. Would you be able to kind of share a little bit to the audience and talk about that?
Yeah, so right now the alUSD AMO is routed through our alUSD 3 curve pool that has in total about 105 million TVL, of which the AMO is about 45 million of that total chunk of liquidity. So that's about 40% or so. of that, which allows us to really defend the peg all the way down to like a tiny supply. But one of the problems with the three curve pool is that we are completely on the hook for incentivizing it. So we're incentivizing, but as a result, we're also incentivizing DAI liquidity, USDT, liquidity, and USDC. So the big difference there, if we work with FraxBP instead, then Frax will like actually work together with the protocols who are supporting it and its liquidity, and pitch in some to the incentives. And they do, and if I'm wrong about this, correct me, but it's like there's like a set budget for how much FXS bribes go out, and that's based on the relative amount of Frax base pool tokens that are locked in your liquidity pools.
Sounds about right.
And so like instead of us paying 100% for all of the liquidity, and all of DAI's and USDC's and USDT's liquidity as well, we would be paying, definitely the majority, but not like an overwhelming majority if we were working with Frax instead.
You get a pitch basically into it. It's basically
it makes economic sense to team up and pair with Frax, and it's my personal opinion that Frax has passed the test, and they've proved themselves to be a reliable and resilient protocol.
Perfect. Sam, make sure you clip that, okay?
Up and down, right? So that's what makes me confident by having like a deeper collaboration with Frax, is just because of how resilient it's been. And like some people might be a little bit annoyed that they're not going to have as much liquidity to trade over to DAI or to Tether, but with how low the fees are on Curve and how good DEX aggregators are, it's really a trivial concern at this point. Instead of swapping 100 alUSD for 99.8, I'm going to be swapping 100 alUSD for 99.79, because of the fees. Like it's a negligible difference, right?
Yes. So, in terms of liquidity for the Frax, base pool and just Frax in general across the board, every week we have this thing on our Frax check called the peg check, where we check making sure that Frax is still at $1 no matter what. And obviously we go through the homepage to see the peg, but we also go to Curve Finance and do a $100 million swap on Frax into USDC, and we always receive like 0.9988. It's like the lowest we ever got in terms of like the peg kind of breaking. So the peg is strong there for all the Alchemix
peg is strong
community. Is that even in the midst of like the market turmoil?
I think FraxBP came after the turmoil, but in terms of like the most recent term, yes, absolutely. Even throughout this whole bear market, it was 0.9988 was like the floor. So
this would be probably more for the Alchemix community because they might not be as well versed into Frax.
Absolutely. So the reason why Frax is able to do so effectively is because Frax's largest AMO is called the Curve AMO, which essentially houses the Frax plus 3 CRV, which is USDC, USDT, and DAI, which is what alUSD is currently being paired with. Now, the way the AMO operates is that as more 3 CRV is deposited into the pool, Frax can then mint more Frax into that same Curve pool. So now that there's always this ratio balance in, so as it ratchets it up, just like what Scoopy said earlier, we can kind of match it. And as it winds down, we can also take it out and burn it. So that way we can both scale up and scale down accordingly to whatever the market factors are. And there are no human, kind of interaction and dictating that, we need more Frax, let's take more risk. No, it's based on this, an algorithmic market operation to execute on the Curve AMO.
Yeah, it uses the protocol to maintain peg.
Correct.
That's how I put it simply. Yeah.
And another piece is that although there is 1.2 billion Frax outstanding, a large majority of that is actually owned by the Frax protocol themselves, right? I believe only 500 million of the outstanding Frax are like outside of the protocol owned liquidity across the AMOs and things of that nature. And it is impossible for that 500 mil to come in and break the pool because there isn't 500 mil out there. There's more liquidity in the pool to absorb all of that. So the pool will never be drained. It's essentially what the point of that outstanding Frax is.
And, you know, like through this mechanism, if there is 500 million Frax out there that's not in the AMOs, that's 500 million Frax that other people have bought basically from the markets.
Yeah.
So that just gives Frax a larger share of the pools in the AMO, which makes them even more defensible.
Correct. Absolutely correct.
Yeah,
And
and honestly, the most important. I was going to say the most important thing for stablecoin adoption, honestly, especially right now in DeFi, is collaborations like this, collaborating, with other protocols, whether it's Alchemix or Olympus or other ones, because at the end of the day, DeFi is still pretty small, especially like right now, and it's a lot more conducive for everyone to work together, see where the money Legos fit, rather than have this winner take all mindset. And this is what really stuck out to me about your request for comment here, and what you proposed with using FraxBP instead of the 3 pool, and also using Frax as actually collateral now for alUSD.
Yeah, to me, especially the FraxBP AMO, seems like it's very much a win-win scenario. We get assistance with liquidity provisioning, and in return, you guys get an increase in the total supply of Frax because we're helping to create demand for it as well. So I think that right there just is really good because it's mutually beneficial. And then the logical conclusion is hey, if we're going to be pairing the lion's share of our liquidity with Frax, I mean, why wouldn't we then accept Frax as a collateral? Now, I'm not sure if you guys are an asset on Aave as far as being a
I think we are.
collateral
We
asset
are.
or something like that. I'm not sure if you guys are borrowable or collateral.
Yeah, we are.
We
Okay,
are.
so that would be one integration that we could do. I don't think you have a Yearn pool that's just naked Frax. There's various Frax, liquidity pools, but I don't think there's a naked Frax vault yet. But then also Vesper is an integration that's going to be out of the woodwork very soon. They have a Frax pool as well, or Frax vault rather.
Right.
So
What about Fraxlend?
Fraxlend?
Yeah.
Oh, I have not done a really big deep dive on Fraxlend, and I don't know about integrating Fraxlend just yet because any time that we do an integration, we have to make a specific adapter. We're hoping that this process will be a lot easier with widespread adoption of ERC 4626. But we would have to do research and development in order to get Fraxlend on.
I think it will probably come. FraxETH may come sooner than the incorporation of Fraxlend with Alchemix. I feel because you got to have your alETH, pair that up with FraxETH, and basically just run it back turbo with
Oh yeah,
what
you
you're gonna
can
do with
just look it up
alUSD.
to FraxETH.
Yeah, I'm excited for FraxETH. That's a little bit out of scope for this current,
Of course.
request for comment. But definitely it's something that's on my radar.
Alpha. Okay, continue.
Yeah, because I mean, the mechanism design. Let me try to recount it, and correct me if I'm wrong. Is that the FraxETH by itself is not a yield bearing token. but that will be what's paired in exchanges. So there'll be like a FraxETH pool, and stuff like that. And in a way that kind of takes care of a lot of the headaches that Lido and RETH have, because when you're doing stable swaps and then you have a rebasing thing like STETH, you have to sync the pools, and that's like a big pain. And then if you have something like wrapped staked ETH or RETH, then that's always going up relative to ETH. So then the pool balance will get out of whack, and it'll be harder to really have deep liquidity for it. So I think the FraxETH kind of takes care of that. And then in return, you can deposit your FraxETH into a savings, module or yield module, and then that will get all of the ETH2 staking rewards. But since there is going to be so much liquidity in, the pools to help peg it, and those aren't getting the rebases, then the FraxETH that's in this yield module will be getting more than
Correct.
say STETH or RETH would be getting.
Always
Correct.
a boosted yield there. Yep.
Always.
Yes.
And
So
on top of
I
that,
think that's a pretty powerful thing. And if Frax is, I think we would have to see how well you guys are able to peg the FraxETH before we could do sufficient risk assessment of it. But
Absolutely.
if we're happy with it and satisfied by the performance, and especially as things get closer to with withdrawals being enabled, I think it is something that would be something that we would pursue.
The FraxETH gauge on Curve was just approved earlier this week, so you're going to get to see that flywheel happen right in front of your eyes, probably in the next coming weeks.
Yeah, I have no doubt that you guys have come up with a solid game plan around all that stuff.
Got it.
Yeah.
Is there any other questions that your community would have?
That's
sorry, Dave,
exactly
go
what I
ahead.
was going to ask.
Our community so far has been a little bit skittish on the fact that Frax is under collateralized or fractionally backed. So maybe. I think some of that is maybe they don't understand the Frax design space so much, or maybe they're using outdated knowledge about Frax. So do you guys think you could maybe soothe that fear that some people in my community have?
Yeah. Kit, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
No. Take it away, Dave.
Wait. Can you repeat the question one more time? Because I was actually reading the questions that your community had, but I would like to answer your question. The last thing I heard was dispel any fears. But could you repeat?
So it's more about Frax being fractionally backed or somewhat under collateralized.
Yeah. Honestly, to rehash what Kit said earlier, Frax has the liquidity backing it. That even if all the Frax in circulation were to be swapped on Curve, it would still maintain peg. And also we have a saying at Frax and what's been going around the Frax community and beyond that even though Frax is partially collateralized, it's fully backed. So I like to think of all the different on-chain activities that Frax does on-chain, whether it's with the Curve AMO or other AMOs, and the profits generated from that and the revenues generated from that, those actions are actually backing the protocol as well. And with the collateral ratio, that is basically the market's psychological footprint in their confidence in Frax. And so,
what is the collateralization ratio right now?
Right now it's at
89%.
93%.
It went down.
89%? It went to 89%?
I know.
Wow.
Okay.
It was at 93% before.
I know.
Wow,
So this is
Wow.
Okay, so it went down a little bit recently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also there's one last thing. Frax has always maintained peg. Frax has proven itself to be Lindy, and Lindy has compounding effects, and its model has worked. And it's receiving more and more adoption. It's got the Curve cosign to be a meta pool, and it has enough of a cosign from you and the Alchemix team, yourselves, to be having a request for comment like this.
I see. Do you guys think that Frax will have a potential to become over collateralized in the future?
I think with Fraxlend and the lending AMOs, like with those modules, it is over collateralized. So like with the lending AMO, it's basically the entire MakerDAO protocol in one AMO. So, if there's more of a desire, for like that type of Frax to be in circulation, then, I can see the lending AMOs ramping up. I think one thing that is a possibility in the future if like Frax goes to 100% collateralized. There has been talk about that in the community, especially after like the whole Luna thing happened. Nothing concrete has happened yet, but I don't think it will ever be over collateralized. But there may be a future where Frax is 100% collateralized, but I'm not sure if that will happen.
So for me,
what scenarios do you think would lead to 100% or greater than 100% collateralization?
I think like just community input and what the community wants and feels comfortable with. Wait, Kit, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to jump in and add some color here. The collateral that will be used for, like, say, Fraxlend is drastically going to improve that collateral ratio because those things, like Dave mentioned, would be over collateralized. And on top of that, the revenue and profit being generated by each of these new products, right, from FraxSwap to FrxETH to Fraxlend and even FrxFerry in the future, like there could be a scenario where Frax's profitability actually, keeps on stacking up the AMO and the treasury to actually grow to meet the Frax outstanding supply. Right, because remember, the outstanding supply is the amount of supply that Frax does not own, the protocol. So Frax needs to beat that amount into its own AMO and have enough to back that. So just putting that out there.
So from profit from various or revenue from various streams, plus the addition of over collateralized lending on Fraxlend should or could push it over 100%.
Correct. At scale.
That's good. That's good to know. So, and another, I think, big concern that's been mentioned in our community is more about like regulations, because our boy SBF in one of his in his now infamous blog post, he recommended that every single stablecoin, decentralized stablecoin out there has to be over collateralized, which would be the end of algorithmic stablecoins. If this provision gets put in the legislation that he's pushing. Do you guys have any plans or contingency plans to deal with that if that does happen?
I can't speak for the Frax team, but I can like share my personal thoughts on this. I think in the future, it would make sense for fiat-backed stablecoins, so stablecoins that do touch the legacy system, like USDC, Tether. Like I could see them being regulated in the future in the same way that centralized exchanges are, regulated. But when it comes to, crypto-backed stablecoins that are 100% on-chain, like Frax, you can argue in a sense that's a regulator's dream. You can see their collateral all right there. You can go and check. It's like basically like a transparency check every block, and so and also with all this chatter, I don't really see any action yet. There's language in the bill, drafts have coming out, people like to spread FUD on Twitter, get engagement, blah blah blah. It's a sticky news story. It's it's a sticky meme, but really no action has been taken yet. It's like important to consider regulation, and it's being talked about, and I think it's up to us to make our voices heard in the relevant regulatory bodies and governments, whether it's in the U.S. or the EU, to educate them properly and support the proper lobbying and trade associations. For example, Frax actually donated 60,000 Frax to Coin Center recently in the latest Gitcoin round. So backing the proper lobbying groups, making sure the right people are getting educated. But I'm not as concerned about it as other people. I'm definitely aware of it, but I think it's more important just to focus on what's happening on chain and build and make the best products possible and act in the best faith possible on chain and show people from the outside, like, look what's happening on chain. Look what's, look at all, look at, whether it's whether it's the good and the collaboration between like Frax and Alchemix that's going on. That's pretty cool. Or even if it's like the bad, I think like the whole Faye saga that happened and it came to a compromise, like the fact that it came to a compromise so quickly, when it could have been dragged, if it was in traditional finance, it would have been dragged out in courts for years. I mean, Mt. Gox is still going on. But the fact that it was, it came to terms very quickly and, all parties like, came to a compromise and it was over with, like, I think that's quite impressive to regulators. So I'm definitely more an optimist, definitely more idealist in this. And like, I think as we keep acting in good faith and showing like the good that DeFi can do, it just gives us more firepower when like those questions come along. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I'm going to push back just a little bit. Like, so one of the things that goes on in our internal process is like, if all of the worst things that could go wrong do go wrong, what would be the outcome here? And that kind of informs a lot of our decision making. It might be a little bit like too paranoid and too scared, but what if regulators really do shit the bed and they say, you know what, no algorithmic stablecoin is allowed for, US customers, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And,
Let me
you guys
jump
would
in
either
here.
be forced to exclude all of USA, or you would then maybe make some changes to the protocol. Is there anything you guys could do in the protocol that could help you comply with that? If such a stupid rule is made.
I think I know what you're going to say, Kit, but I'll let you go ahead.
Okay. So I just wanted to jump in and make a note. The majority of all of Frax's liquidity is on chain. Frax is not on centralized exchanges. So, first of all, right there's no quote risk of liquidity just being pulled and yanked out from underneath us. So it's like,
I would say Frax's one commandment is everything's on chain. If Frax is a network state, the one commandment that all assets must be on chain.
Yeah. Because of that one point,
Is there
Scoopy.
a parameter you could adjust though to get to 100% collateralization? Like, I know, like, I accept the argument that everything's on chain, everything's transparent, and everything like that. But like, is there, if like, what if regulators don't buy that? Or they're saying, these are the rules,
I was to answer your question before, like, let's say the worst case scenario happens. Dollar stablecoins are just banned, and it's the worst case scenario. That's what FPI is for. I think that's why FPI was created, to have, if like, what we think of it as, whether, if the post-dollar war were to exist, like, what would be the stablecoin of that? Or if like, okay, if we were to build a stablecoin from the ground up, what would it look like? And it would be something like FPI, because the dollar already is loosely pegged to the consumer price index. So it makes sense to start a new stablecoin that is, at first, it's just directly pegged to this consumer price index. But as governments gets more mature with it, you can actually, I imagine them adjusting the methodology of it. So maybe, I always say, like, maybe they take an Amazon.com API endpoint for electronics, or a Cars.com API endpoint for cars. But in the future, if like all dollar stablecoins get banned, then I say FPI. And that, but if like they do but I'm not sure how they would. I feel like the U.S. government only has domain over the dollar. I'm not sure, and also like EU is regulating, like their plan regulation is for the dollar. It's something like FPI or like other like non-peg stablecoins, whether they're Olympus or Rye, come out. I'm not sure there's much to do to regulate them, because they're pretty much their own sovereign currencies. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that all makes sense. But I'm more like just thinking, like, if you want to keep Frax alive and compliant with such a thing, is there like, for example, would you be able to set the collateral ratio to 100%?
Yeah.
Frax.
I think if like worst comes to
back
like,
to
if like
we do.
the collateral requirements, yes. The answer is yes to that question.
Okay, yeah. So like, So if doomsday comes, you guys would be able to, comply.
But the thing there, though, Scoopy.
Another concern, and it's not something that would be, exclusive to Frax. It would affect the entire stablecoin space. But what if, USDC or Tether starts using their blacklist on protocols?
Yeah.
What happens in those scenarios? Like that I think is like the chief concern. I don't think like any one protocol can really say like there's a definitive answer for how it would affect things or whatnot. And it's not something that's exclusive to Frax. It would be for basically any protocol out there that uses stablecoins. But is that something that's been thought about in the Frax community?
Absolutely.
So
So
talks about.
we actually track
ahead.
this metric called the decentralization percent, and that denotes like what percent of the assets or the collateral backing Frax is decentralized. Right now, we recently hit our all-time low of like around 14%, but during the bull market, it was up to like around 33%, and that is your FXS, your ETH, your any non-centralized collateral backing the Frax. And moving forward, again, this is where FrxETH, or rather Fraxlend, would lend itself to getting improving that decentralization percent into a higher and higher number. Because as more on-chain collateral is used to mint Frax rather than USDC, that decentralization percent is going to keep on going up. So there's absolutely a plan to keep on increasing that number until hopefully it breaches 100% and everything is collateralized on chain. And on top of that, the FXS shares is literally being held across the board by a lot of other DeFi DAOs as well as one of their key holdings in their treasury. And also, like, Frax is literally spread across every single DeFi protocol out there. So every pool that has Frax in it, if Circle does go ahead and freeze and brick it, it would literally brick all of DeFi. So that is a very, very, kind of existential threat if that were to happen.
Honestly, like, it's such a misnomer to call Frax, and actually just straight up false to call Frax wrap USDC. It's really wrapped DeFi. Frax is literally DeFi stablecoin. It's backed by all these different protocols, all the AMOs at work, and all these, and it's literally serving to back Frax. And, I think that's what Sam was thinking, the team was thinking when they designed the AMOs. It's like, how can we best integrate all these different protocols? And, like you said, like, if Circle or Tether or like any entity were to do anything, they would have to blacklist DeFi in order to blacklist Frax because Frax is just DeFi stablecoin.
And what's the point of having
So it would be
on-chain?
like an unwinnable game of whack-a-mole.
Whack-a-mole, yeah.
Well, and also, like, what's the point? And what's the point of Circle having their own crypto stablecoin if DeFi is dead? It would just be centralized exchanges trading USDC, right? That kind of defeats the purpose of having USDC to begin with. US dollar coin.
Yeah.
Right.
It's something I heard that's interesting. I'm in Lisbon right now for ETH Lisbon, and I was having conversations with people, and because yield rates are so high, what's been something that's been talked about is like, will these centralized exchanges, whether they're like Binance or maybe FTX or someone, like pass the treasury yield like directly to their users, and like that will be like a new type of farm, like people can just like deposit their like centralized stablecoin in the exchange, and boom, they like earn yield that way. I thought that was interesting. I don't know what you guys.
MakerDAO is proposing to do with their
Yes.
PSMs is to go on Coinbase and Gemini, and essentially become Frax-like, except with CeFi instead of DeFi.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which is also one of the reasons that I was kind of interested in adding Frax is because, well, DAI is undergoing these changes to become more centralized, and then possibly also allow it to go off peg.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that too. Like, what are your thoughts on like that proposal, like for Frax, for DAI to possibly go off peg?
Well,
like,
earlier in this podcast, I said we make a couple economic assumptions, and that the stablecoins that we select are assumed to be $1, and if DAI does go off peg and they let it drift, then it will no longer be a suitable collateral for Alchemix. And then in that world, I would not want to see Alchemix that's only, borrowable using USDC and USDT. I'd much rather have a decentralized stablecoin option for our users, from both like a protocol resiliency standpoint, but also, just to give our users choice if they don't feel comfortable using, fiat coins.
I'm also looking at, you had the proposal for the request for comment. Your community made like a few comments to it. And one interesting one I've seen right here is, Frax is a partially backed from Boss 007. He said, Frax is a partially backed token where FPI is fully backed. Would it be better to add FPI to the protocol as well? Like, have you thought about that too? Have you considered that as well?
So FPI would not work for an alUSD collateral because of what I said, the economic assumption.
Oh, shoot.
Not
$1.
$1. Yeah.
Whether or not we can do something with FPI in the future, I'm going to leave that open for possibility. And I'm just going to leave it at that. There's don't want to give you guys cryptic hints like, oh yeah, we're planning this. I'm just saying our design space should expand going forward, which will allow us to try out and integrate different things.
I like the sound of that.
Got it.
Experimentation, but with patience.
Yes.
Scoopy, I want to ask
got some
you.
things in the oven, but they're a little bit too early to talk about at this moment. So
Yeah.
Got it. I wanted to ask you, Scoopy, what does success look like for alUSD for you?
okay, so for us, alUSD success would be broad adoption in DeFi. So, getting those key integrations on lending protocols that can help to drive demand for alUSD. I think at this point that we are the market has a good amount of confidence in alUSD. If you look at the interest rates on convex, what you can get, you notice that the stable coins that are deemed as riskier require a higher APY for people to invest in them, and the ones that are seen as more trustworthy or safe can get away with having a lower APY. And so, like, imagine this is a spectrum. You've got like 3 curve, which has like very little APY but has a giant chunk of liquidity. You have Frax, who has on the lower end of APY now, but still has been able to maintain a lot of sticky liquidity. Your LPs have not left, right? That balance out the other side. And alUSD is a little bit behind you guys. You guys, I think, are somewhere in the 2%. We're somewhere in the 3%. And then you kind of go down the list, and then you look at something like MIM, and they're like routinely over 10%. So they have to pay a lot more for their liquidity. So, gaining that Lindy effect, where people can feel safe and comfortable that our pegging mechanisms will work and that they're comfortable LPing with us. That's one area of success. The other, is like more integration into lending protocols like Aave, maybe Fraxlend. I don't know. That would be something that would be really cool. But in the end, these protocols were endeavors that are looking to make a return, so to speak. And I think that if we get to the point where the emissions that we spend on alUSD are less than the revenue it generates, that is also success there. And we're very close to the AMO. Some weeks were profitable versus our incentives that we dole out. Other weeks were a little bit under. So we're really close to reaching that point where
Right there.
we could indefinitely sustain this.
Got it. Do you guys sell your
FraxBP
CRV
could
and
be
CRV?
What was that?
Do you guys sell your CVX and CRV, or do you just relock it to amplify the voting?
Right now, we lock half of what we earn from CVX and Curve, and we use Stake DAO's liquid lockers, so SD Curve
Okay.
gauge, to influence the gauge that way. And yeah, Stake DAO's awesome, so yeah, shout out to them. Um, and so we do that, and the other half is becomes like treasury assets, and whether
Got
we
it.
diversify those into stable coins or other strategic assets is kind of like up to the treasury team. Right now we passed a proposal to accumulate YFI in anticipation for their VYFI things, because we're so intertwined with Yearn. By having the YFI boosts and the perks that come along with that, we can then pass those on to our users. So that's one way that we're diversifying our treasury. And then it also, if we, you know, like we're fine on runway and enough to pay everybody, but if we need to start selling that curve or CVX for stable coins for stuff, we can do that as well. So
Got it.
yeah.
What does the Alchemix treasury currently look like? Like, what assets do you hold mostly in it?
Yeah, so probably our biggest holdings right now are SD Curve Gauge and CVX tokens. That accounts for about half of our non-ALCX treasury holdings. We have a very healthy chunk of ETH that is protocol owned liquidity, not controlled like the AMO, but owned, and then that is actually helping us to supply liquidity for alETH. Right, so instead of just having it sit idle in there, we're putting it into our. We have half of it in the convex alETH pool or curve alETH pool, and then the other half on Optimism with Velodrome.
Ooh, interesting.
Yes, yes, and that's also another thing that we've made strategic investment into is Velodrome, and we think that they're really cool. It's essentially Curve, but with it's a much more open framework. You don't have to get like approvals for gauges, and the way they do their like protocol fee payouts is based on like if you vote for a pool, then your payout is relative to the volume that pool gets. And I think that's a really smart thing because
So you're a fan of the solidly forks?
Yeah, I was
You
gonna
think it's a
be.
good
I
model?
like Velodrome. They're a really good
Velodrome,
team.
yeah. Yeah, they
Yeah,
are a good team.
they're great to work with. They gave us Alchemix a V NFT to start out with, and we didn't really pay much attention to it except like, okay, we'll vote for our tokens over there, and then we started noticing like how good it was, and it started taking off a bit more. So we decided to invest a bit more into it.
That's cool. Like how it proved itself over time. I believe the same thing happened with Frax as well. Like Velodrome, like really pivoted and centered themselves as like the community, AMM for optimism, and like everybody can win, everybody can earn rewards too. And I think it was the solidly done right. Finally,
Yeah, it was solidly without all the Andre drama.
yes, it was drama free, solidly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And speaking of like L2s and then kind of like EVM cross chain, like does Alchemix, how many chains is Alchemix on right now? And how many of the L2s as well?
We have our protocol deployed to Ethereum mainnet, Phantom, and Optimism. Now, Optimism has a full deployment with both alETH and alUSD, but Phantom only has alUSD on it. We're probably going to, stop supporting Phantom. Their DeFi ecosystem, kind of died when the whole Andre drama happened, and we haven't seen much adoption. Things are better on Optimism in comparison, and by having the Velodrome, voting power and stuff like that, we don't have to spend anything on liquidity over there. So that's a big bonus.
Yeah. I mean, the reason why I asked is because I see.
We're also looking at, I think we're going to be more roll-up centric going forward, than trying to go to, competing EVMs. like Phantom or Avalanche and the like. Just we're decidedly ETH maxis at Alchemix.
Nice.
It aligns with our ethos a lot more than some of these other chains do.
Yeah, I asked because I see Arbitrum as an option on your little drop down here, but there says no strategies yet.
We have some collaborations we're working with to get liquidity over there, but we have not deployed our Alchemist contracts over there just yet. But it's something that we are eyeing. That's no secret. We're just kind of waiting for for it to make sense for us to go over there.
Yeah. One thing I was going to ask.
The key thing I think about this is that we have one low fee option that's viable for our users, at least one, because when the next bull market comes and ETH's back at 100 GWei per transaction, I don't want to price out people who can't afford to pay the gas tax on Ethereum.
Absolutely. And I think that's something Ethereum learned pretty quick during this cycle when all the different L1s and all L1s came out. It was like, all right, it's time for the roll-ups to come out. And like now they're being battle tested during the bear. When the next bull comes, the roll-ups will be ready to take a hefty amount of those executions. Yeah. Another thing I was going to...
Looking forward to ZK Sync scaling up.
Oh, me too. I think that will be like a real 0 to 1 moment as well. Like once ZK EVM comes out and like the fees are real low, and like seeing like all the possibilities and all the adoption that can come through that.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody who's like, really heavy into development on rollups, and he's wanting to deploy a rollup on a rollup to enable some really cool DeFi gaming type of or crypto gaming setups.
Everybody wants to be their own chain. I feel a rollup. At the end of the, people just want to own their own real estate. It's just such an attractive option not to consider. I don't know. Has like Alchemix thought of that?
I mean, with how much we rely on composability in DeFi, I don't know if it really makes sense for us to go off and make our own chain. I mean, definitely the temptation is there because L1s or chains are valued with a different framework than DeFi protocols. But it would have to make sense for us to do it if there's some major infrastructure upgrades that allow people to use Alchemix chain as a central hub that then can connect to all these other chains and their yield sources. Maybe in the future, but that's definitely beyond the scope of what we're working on right now. We're trying to make improvements to our protocol to have it be more scalable, to give more confidence in the market as far as pegging and Lindy goes, and being able to take on handle risk better than we do right now. So those are the things that we're really pursuing, and once we've achieved those things, potentially we could go in that direction, but there's been zero talk about that internally.
You guys have your priorities straight. You know what needs to be done.
Yeah, well, we definitely have a moat around self-repaying loans. Nobody else has been able to gain any traction with that. And I think us having our AMO and strategic assets in our treasury is really helping us to maintain that moat as well.
Another question I was going to ask is, what else is in the pipeline for Alchemix in the future? Whether it's like near term or medium term, anything you'd like to share that hasn't been mentioned already?
Oh man, you're torturing me here. Come on.
Jeez, give it.
My team, my team is listening, they're like, no, Scoopy, don't do it. Don't do it.
If you made it this far, you deserve a little bit.
You deserve a little alpha.
I've given you guys, I've dropped a few hints, you can read between the lines. But one thing I can talk about that has been very open in development is the Alchemix DAO. So far, it's nearing completion. I know that's been the tune that we've been saying for a long time, but really, it really is near completion, guys. And really.
Soon, TM.
So what we're doing is our own unique take on the V escrow system. voting escrow system from Curve. And so I can talk about that a bit. So we've studied the space and different implementations of it. And so we're going to be borrowing some things from other people. One thing that we are going to be borrowing is the what Balancer did. So instead of just having the naked token be the basis for the V token, it'll actually be a Balancer 80-20 pool. So 80% ALCX, 20% ETH. And so that's part of our goal of being able to reduce emissions while also providing liquidity for trading on DeFi. Because while ALCX is on most of the major exchanges and most of the volume comes from that, we definitely think that having a DeFi option is extremely important for our users. So like by doing that, we can have sustainable liquidity for our users, or for traders on on chain. So that's one thing I think that's very important about it. So another thing is that one thing I really hated about Curve's design is that once you lock for 4 years, you are locked for 4 years. And there is no way out. And if you're going to try to have your tokens vest and get out, your voting power and your rewards decay over time. So if you put in like 1 million Curve and lock for 4 years, you get 1 million V Curve. But then after 2 years, that would decay down to 500,000 V Curve. Then another year, the last year would be 250,000. And then like the last few months, it would practically be nothing. And so by having to wait out that entire process and not have any option to get out earlier, I think is one of the biggest pain points with it. So what we're doing with Alchemix, with our implementation, is max lock will be 1 year, because 4 years is an eternity in DeFi. And we're going to be introducing a DAO specific sub currency. And when you are, locking VALCX, you'll get this resource called, it's tentatively called Mana. It's going to be changed because Mana is Decentraland's.
Right.
But basically, this will it'll accrue as a just a resource. It won't be a token in your account, and you can use this. You can burn it or spend it when it's in its non-liquid form to boost your gauge votes, because we'll have gauges. So you could burn that. And if you decide I want to mint this, then a certain amount of this token can then be burned to allow an early unlock of your VALCX position.
Oh.
So even if you didn't have enough time to save up enough to unlock, you could go to the market, buy it, and then unlock. So it creates an actual market for early unlocks.
I really like this innovation happening to VE tokens. I think it's
Super
much
cool.
needed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think not all it's VE tokens, or even tokenomics in general. It's not one size fit all, and obviously improvements or adjustments can be made. And I remember you talking about this specifically on Goodwill Yunting with Xerox Maki, I think it was back in December or January, and I was like,
this is one of the ideas that I'm like, no, this is going in. This is going in.
This is gonna and when you said it, I was really excited about it. I was like, okay, this is cool. Finally, more innovation happening in DeFi, building on top of what others have started. So I'll be really excited once this comes out soon. TM.
Yeah, we've had some internal hiccups. The one dev who was leading the development of it, he unexpectedly just quit, and it's like, okay, what do we do now? So we then had to reorganize, divert resources over towards it, and kind of because different coders are working on it, refactor and a bunch of stuff, and that slowed us down quite a bit.
It happens. The trials and tribulations of being a builder.
Yes. So yes, it's never a straight line to the finish line in development. So Yes. Hopefully, though, like everything is looking really good and progress has been really good as of late. So we're optimistic that we're going to be able to get this thing shipped in a reasonable time frame.
Got it.
Yeah,
And
I'm
speaking of
optimistic as
like,
well.
speaking of all these like DAO changes and such, Yearn is kind of going through all that as well right now. And you had mentioned it earlier that you guys are getting you're buying Wi-Fi because there might be V Wi-Fi or something like that. Could you talk a little bit more about what you think about the Yearn changes and what's exciting or what's kind of troubling for you?
No more 30K supply.
Yeah. So like if you lock up V Wi-Fi, then like basically it allows you to control gauges, and then the gauges will then give boosted yields to different pools, right? So by doing so, we can then, if we lock it up and we have influence over the gauges, we can then boost the pools that connect to Alchemix. And in doing so, we can pass along those benefits to our users. And if they see, oh, I can go to Yearn, I can get 2%, or I can go to Alchemix and use Yearn and get 3% instead, we're going to have all that TVL flow to us, right?
Got it.
Or it's going to go to the, stuff, yeah. So
It's kind of like
that's
convex.
kind of like the idea for it, is to make us more, our options more appealing. You would also get like, protocol income and stuff like that. So it would be like passive income coming from these Wi-Fi tokens. So it wouldn't be like a total sunk cost for us to do this. We would get residual income that might exceed it over time, the cost over time.
A strategic investment.
Yeah, and like having like we have SD curve, and that streams us payments. We have CVX, and then that streams us payments. We also have a bunch of SDT tokens, so staked house tokens, and by locking those into VSDT, we actually get a boost on the amount of V curve votes we control. So we have around like 3.7 million SD curve tokens. But because we have so much SDT locked, we actually have around 4.5 million SD curve of voting power.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you know
And
Yearn?
also on top of that, SD curve or VSDT does stream is it I think it's their Frax pool reward as well. So there's lots of like these investments that help us source liquidity and TVL and stuff like that are actually paying us back over time. So they help us grow and to have more cash flow. So
Nice. And do you know if the V Wi-Fi is going to help reduce the fee a little bit for lockers?
I do not know. I was not the one spearheading this, so I'm not as intimate with it,
Got
with
it.
all the ins and outs of the V Wi-Fi.
Got it. Got it. So speaking of all these partnerships, I know we're coming to the top of the hour to end the pod here, but I want to know, what do you feel would be a successful partnership between you and Frax? Or rather between Alchemix and Frax?
I think that there's a lot of potential synergies between Alchemix and Frax. If we have Frax as a collateral asset, for example, Frax could deploy an Alchemix AMO that then has them deposit Frax into Alchemix, mint alUSD, and then pair alUSD and Frax together in the Frax base pool with alUSD. So it could turn into this really virtuous cycle that allows you guys to scale and us to scale simultaneously. And I think that's something that that would be, my wet dream if that were to happen.
Oh,
Because I had actually talked to Sam about that a long time ago and he was down for it, but we didn't have a framework for how that would work, and Frax wasn't a collateral at the time. But now that, I think
Frax, it is a collateral.
Frax
It
has
is
gotten to a
possible.
point where, its reputation has been established and has that Lindy and the confidence in the market, that accepting Frax as a collateral is something that our community is much more open to now than they would have been, this time last year. And
for
also
sure.
having the AMO in a pool that's, pairs alUSD with Frax makes this also a lot more possible. So, yeah.
Super cool. Because I looked
Wow.
at alUSD's in supply before the call here, and you guys are sitting about 175 mil. Like, your size is size, you know? So definitely
Yeah.
seeing
So
scaling
some of
that up.
that, in the interest of pure, transparency, some of that supply is actually alUSD that's been withdrawn from our AMO. This stuff here is we're debating internally whether we can be like Frax and redeploy it, to various other initiatives or not. So that's why it has not been burned yet, as because we're not sure if we would do those things or not. So, our supply is, closer to, I think, like, 70 or 80 million that's actually out there in circulation.
Oh, I see. And
Yes.
this is the excess alUSD from folks repaying their debt? Or,
This is from our AMO at one point was like double the size of what it is right now, but we had to withdraw a lot of alUSD in the downturn in
oh, I
order
see. I
to
see.
balance the pay.
I see. That's where it
Yes.
is. Oh,
Yes. So our size is kind of size, but yeah.
Our
Yes.
size is growing to be size a
yeah.
little bit
That,
Yes.
each day.
Well, we're surviving and we're doing all right. Yes. So yeah, yes, we will be hopefully up there with you guys one day.
dude, absolutely. Let's
Uh,
get a proposal together, and I mean, obviously, after your community kind of digests and you get all of the requests for comments and such, and then I could totally see this being a very symbiotic relationship, and we would
yeah.
love, like, Sam K is always a positive sum all the time guy. So having another decentralized stablecoin that has its own separate mechanic kind of come in and help, because I would love to increase our decentralization percent by adding like Alchemix to the mix, right? Alchemix to the mix.
Hmm.
But then that would be something that we could absolutely talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Hopefully,
collaborations that can happen.
the community really, takes this request for comment, and the vibe is positive, and we can get into proposal and get it working, and then look for more synergies from there on out.
Yeah, hopefully with, conversations like this, the vibe is checked and it passes. And we continue with collaborations and more conversations like this.
Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. And on that note, I think it's time to get into the lightning round.
Yes.
This is when we have our, just basic, simple questions,
Just
about
trying to get to
crypto,
know
not
you
about
better,
crypto.
Scooby.
Just get to know you better, just a little bit
You know.
better.
So the first
All right.
question we always like to start out with was, when was the first time you touched the chain? And sexes don't count.
The chain,
Yeah. When was your
Ethereum
first
was,
any your
I
virgin
think it
crypto
was like
experience?
the first time I touched Ethereum. Oh no, Bitcoin was what was it, like mid 2016 is when I first started buying Bitcoin. Um, and then I quickly kind of converted to being like an Ethereum after that, in 2017, especially once I started seeing the apps go live.
What was the first thing you did on Ethereum?
Um, I bought a CryptoKitty.
Hell yeah, I did too.
Same. Okay. Second question. What is your favorite off-chain activity? Like, what is your favorite touch grass activity?
Dungeons and Dragons is my
No.
favorite.
Nice.
I both am a
Yes,
player and a dungeon master.
a
Probably
master.
prefer being a dungeon master,
Wow, we
but yeah.
should totally get
Get D-
together doing a DeFi Dungeons and Dragons, a DDD, you know.
DDD,
Dungeons and DeFi, yes. Let's do it.
Dungeons and DeFi. What is some advice you would give to your younger self?
Um, Younger self, it would be to not go after some bullshit degree while you're in university and do something more technical earlier on. I didn't get into tech until later in my life, and I feel like if I was younger doing it, I'd have a much bigger leg up than I do right now. Don't waste your time with the liberal arts degree.
Pain.
Got it. And I mean, I guess this kind of tees up. What would you be doing career-wise if you weren't in crypto?
I'd be in education.
As a teacher?
Yeah, I think, educating people is something that I did before crypto. And I was in that field for a while. And then, but just crypto just ignited my imagination too much for me to, ignore it and not pursue a career in it.
I respect that.
Fair. Sam K mentioned the craziest answer. He was like, he would work in neurosciences and doing that brain-computer link or something like that.
You'd be doing Neuralink things.
Yes.
And he described it in such detail. Like, you could tell, like, he would be so far in this field if he chose that. But we're in the timeline where he chose
what I would
this.
gravitate towards if my dream job would probably be like a rocket scientist.
Ooh, that would be cool.
Yeah, I love seeing the development of the aerospace industry over the last decade with SpaceX, and now SpaceX inspiring a bunch of competitors and stuff like that. We're seeing 3D printed rockets now. It's crazy. Things are gonna get wild.
The SpaceX flywheel.
Yes.
Wow. Big brains, big brain activities. Well, that is it on my end. Dave, you want to close this out?
If I pursued a technical degree in my 20s, that's what I might be doing instead. Yeah.
Yeah. Get to the moon, no matter how you choose, basically, whether it's through rockets or through other means.
Yes.
Token price. All right. Dave, you want to sign us out?
Scoopy, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a super fruitful conversation. I hope we have quelled a lot of your community's questions and concerns, and I hope even the Frax community, learned a little bit more about Alchemix and, future exciting plans, and even the wider DeFi community and beyond, got little tidbits out of this, and, showing how protocols can work together to create composability and positive sum outcomes that will benefit all.
Yeah, I'll be looking. Thank you for having me on, for sure.
Yeah.
And I really hope this is educational for the Alchemix community and also a podcast that the Frax community enjoyed. So thanks, guys.
Absolutely. Love to bring you back on next time when everything is partnered up. So happy Halloween, man.
Yeah.
All right, man. Let's do it. Yeah, for sure.
Wow. What a pod, Dave. What a pod. That was such a treat, dude.
It really was. I've been following Scoopy for so long. I remember when he launched Alchemix. I remember before it was Cheese Protocol, and it's just so cool to see the evolution. And I just love talking to builders that have been in the trenches like he has, and how he's adjusted. And you can tell how much he really cares about his product. It's really his baby, and how he thinks about it and how he thinks strategically long term. And I'm really excited to see what collaborations happen with Frax immediately and also far out into the future.
Dude, yeah. Everything you said, plus how meticulous this man is. When even coming to his questioning, I was like, okay, I trust your smart contracts. Was pretty much my takeaway from that call.
Yeah, putting the smart in smart contracts for sure.
Absolutely. And with that, I hope you guys enjoyed the pod as much as Dave and I did. Please make sure you smash that subscribe button. We passed that comma. We're on the march to 10,000. So please, we need your support. And always follow us at Flywheel Pod on Telegram and Twitter.
And I'm DeFi Dave 22 on Twitter.
And I'm 0x_K.
Thank you so much for always. And as always, thank you so much. And as always, everything here is not financial or tax advice. This channel is strictly educational and is not investment advice or solicitation to buy or sell any assets or to make any financial decisions whatsoever. This video is not tax advice. Please talk to your accountant, do your own research. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Peace.